So, in case you didn't know, the BookTube Reading Buddies in February did the Fantasy February Reading Challenge, and I read some fantasy books. And so I wanted to do quick reviews of 3 of them, all of which are the first book of trilogies or series. The first one I have is also the shortest, and that is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This was published in 1995 and is roughly 400 pages long. It is the first book of the Farseer trilogy. The Farseer trilogy is the first trilogy in kind of a longer series of interconnected universes and things that Robin Hobb does. You can look her up for all that information because I'm not too clear on it myself. And this is a story of a boy named Fitz who is the bastard son of a king, and he is trained to be the king's assassin. Hence the title. This is set in a very traditional fantasy world. There aren't a ton of magical elements to it. It's pretty low fantasy, and it's set in a very, kind of medieval setting with the castle and the keep up on a hill, and there's like a seaside town down below, which I really enjoyed. I really like this. I originally gave it 5 stars, but afterwards I changed it to 4 because the story didn't stick with me quite as long as I had anticipated, and I think I was a little hasty with the 5 stars because I was really wrapped up in the action at the end of this novel. It's not a super fast read, but I wouldn't say it's a slow read either. I think this is a great book for people who read a lot of literary fiction or classics and maybe want to pick up some fantasy here and there or get into more fantasy, because the style of writing feels kind of very literary to me. There's a lot of character development. It's kind of a coming-of-age tale of Fitz, the main character, who, as he kind of grows up in court and tries to deal with his place in court life. So there's a lot of intrigue going on as well. Again, I thought this was really fun. I don't have that much critical to say about it, except that it didn't necessarily have the punch that pushed it over the edge for me to give it 5 stars. I thought the ending was fantastic, and it tied up enough ends for me not to feel like I was disappointed that I didn't have the second book yet to read, but it also left enough things open-ended for it to turn into a trilogy, which I really like in a series. So I would highly recommend this, again, to someone who's looking to get into more fantasy. The next book I'm going to talk about you've probably seen around. This is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is the first book in the Kingkiller Chronicles. This was published in 2007, and this edition is about 650 pages long, so this is quite chunky. Also, sad thing about this edition, I did have to break the spine to read it, which I'm really upset about because I never break my spines. Ugh. I know, I'm being a pretentious bookworm right now. Whatever. So, this is the story of a character named Quoth. I believe that's how you say his name. I'm not entirely sure. And it's kind of his coming-of-age story about how he went from living with his family to living on the streets to studying at the university and learning magic there. I thought that the magic system in this book is very complex. I actually had trouble kind of following it at times and remembering what was what. I think that the world building was very good. Again, like Assassin's Apprentice, it's kind of a traditional setting, kind of like almost a medieval, Renaissance-y type world that's been infiltrated by magic. Very traditional. This one I had previously heard to be really recommended to people who like literary fiction because it's very literary in style. The writing is absolutely beautiful in this book. And I'll read you, it's not the blurb necessarily, but it's a quote from the book towards the beginning. So you can get a bit of more of an idea about what this is about, because it's hard for me to describe the plot of a book that is so large without giving anything away. So I'll read you the back. I have stolen princesses back from sleeping barrow kings. I burned down the town of Trebon. I have spent the night with Felurian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people are allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight that others fare to speak of during day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that make the minstrels weep. My name is Quoth. You may have heard of me. So, as you can tell, Quoth is a very arrogant character. He's pretty good at everything he does. He gets down on his luck sometimes, but he always pulls himself up kind of by his bootstraps. And I thought this was really fun. I know a lot of people don't like Quoth as a character, but I thought it was interesting to watch him develop, even if I wasn't personally attached to him or emotionally attached to him. One thing I did not like about this book is the way it ended. I feel like Rothfuss was like, oh shit, this is getting really long, I better wrap it up. And then he kind of did, but there were too many loose ends for me. So I'm going to read the second book because I have to know what happened. But I don't like a trilogy that kind of rushes me into the next book. I like to be able to take a break if I need to. And this one, it felt like maybe the second book should just be attached instead of them being broken into 2 books. So I'll definitely be carrying on with this, and I did give the book 4 out of 5 stars. Lastly, I have the best book. It's not the best book ever, but it is one of the best books I've read in a while. This is Mistborn Book 1, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This was published in 2006. This is the UK edition. It is about 650 pages long. This is my first Brandon Sanderson. So I read this for Fantasy February with the BookTube reading buddies. I also read this for #Year of Cosmere, which you may have heard of. I hope you have by now because BookTube's been blowing up with it. I loved this book so much. I read this book in 3 days, first of all. 3 days during which I also had to work and, handle my life. I woke up early in the morning so I could fit in an hour of reading this book before I went to work. That's insane for me. I have not been so wrapped up in a fantasy universe in a really long time. So let me try and tell you what this book is about. It's basically about 2 characters named Kelsier and Vin. So the Lord Ruler, as he's referred to, of this world, has ruled for thousands of years, and in all that time has suppressed an entire class of people called the Ska, while letting the nobility rise to power. And so there's very interesting political and social messages going on here, but there's also a really cool magic system and very amazing world building. I've heard that Brandon Sanderson is great for world building, so this is awesome. And the magic system basically is that some select people can ingest metals and burn them within themselves to give themselves certain powers. Which, when I first heard about it, sounded really cheesy to me, but it is so well done. What else to say? I loved the characters in this book. Again, the world building's great. I think, again, that it was wrapped up nicely enough for a first book in a trilogy that I want to know what happens next, but it wasn't left with too many threads hanging. And I highly recommend this. If you haven't gotten into Brandon Sanderson yet, please read this, because now I want to read everything he's ever written, because this was so much fun. In case you haven't guessed, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. So yeah, that is all. This is getting really long, which I didn't mean it to be, so hopefully I can edit some of this out. But if you have any questions about these books or have read them and want to talk to me about them, please let me know, and I will see you all soon.